Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Dave. We're the IB English guys. And we just wanted to remind you that we have a website, and there's a lot of good materials there with lots of links to handouts. We've got paper 1 materials, paper 2 materials, IO materials. So have a look because we hope those materials are useful for you. We think it's much better organized than YouTube. Today we want to talk about a student response, a paper 1 response to an advertisement that we love. It's from FIAT India. Can you talk about that ad for a sec?
Yeah, this was featured in 2013, and in the ad we saw an Indian man dressed in white with sort of his arms open, looking up to the heavens. There was a Fiat car featured, and essentially the ad was asking people to make the move, encouraging them to move, purchase a car, rise in social mobility. It was quite a rich text. Definitely go check out our previous video where we break that down and close read that, because there's a lot to say. In my opinion, that would be a perfect IB paper 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we have the companion video. We love this video because now we're going to look at a piece of student writing where they analyze that ad in a time setting. So we think that's really useful for us to say, hey, let's look at the text, but now let's look at this particular student response. You might decide, hey, I want to actually write my own paper 1 on that ad. And that would be smart.
And then compare your response to this one and see how you're doing, right?
That's right.
Mr. Giles, what was the guiding question to that advertisement? Do you remember? Let's present that and then we'll look at the response.
Sure. It was as follows. How does the ad use language and visual elements to convey value messages?
Okay.
And I like that. It's that interplay between language and the visuals.
Yeah, and then of course the rich idea, we have to focus on value messages. So we have to have lots of vocabulary to describe values. Let's see how the student did, Mr. Giles. Let's zoom in and take a look at that intro. What do you notice about the intro?
I noticed, first of all, I love how they're really thinking about like milestones for success and really thinking about that idea of purchasing a car. We talked about that. Purchasing a car is like a big deal. And it's that milestone of like a mark of success. I love that opening. It's really, I think, a clever thing to do.
Yeah, for me, this is really a textbook introduction. I feel like this kid has been watching our YouTube channel because I see sort of a hook into the topic. I see the publisher, I see the year, I see the text type, I see information about target audience.
India,
I see the context, and then I see a short summary statement, and then ultimately they arrive at a thesis that includes language of the guiding question and a rich idea. Mr. Giles.
Yeah.
I look at this intro and I'm already thinking, is this student trending 6 or 7?
Yeah, I know. It's a really, and I like how concise it is too. It's a really firm handshake, as our friend Connor would say, and it's really off to a good start. So then we have our first body paragraph. The first thing I look for in a body paragraph, I really want to see a topic sentence that's anchored in a rich idea and really guides that paragraph. That's so important. This one does exactly that. It says, we're going to focus on the man. This is the subject of that photograph. This is part of the visuals, but we're also attaching it to the value of owning a car.
Yeah, in that value message, we like to highlight the language of the guiding question in green. In this case, it is the value message. But then if I look into this paragraph, I see the words pride, satisfaction, success, and then I actually see the word values again. That allows me to understand that this student is focused on the guiding question, Mr. John. They're just destroying values, but they're doing it through the lens of analyzing the man. What are some of the things that they're looking at when they look at the man?
Yeah, if we're looking at a person that's in a photograph, there's lots of aspects of that subject we can talk about. So we can look at the facial expression, we can talk about what they're wearing, we can talk about their posture, and I think this particular student does that. They're looking at the person's gaze and the person's grin and the person's apparel. All those things are in the text.
Yeah,
really nice. Those are different details.
And I love that how the rich idea in the concluding sentence goes back to that fulfillment of owning a car. That's tapping into one of those rich emotions that we talked about in the last video. I love that. The second paragraph, the second body paragraph rather, is quite short. And I see the word background highlighted, and then I see satisfaction in buying a car. What do you guess that the writer's going to try to do in this paragraph?
They want to look at the setting. They want to look at that beach setting. And I think that's wise. They're not just looking at the man, they're looking at the setting, and they're thinking about the associations with that setting, about calmness, and that's mentioned. That's part of the value that's there. Again, success is brought up again, joy. Again, it's a short paragraph, but it does its job well.
It's important. It's a short but important paragraph. It acknowledges the setting, the time, and the space. Time and space is part of our course, guys. The next paragraph I see looks to be focused on color.
Yeah, the car's color.
Yeah, the car's color, right? So they want to think about about, why did Fiat make that choice and what does that convey by choosing silver and a restrained silver tint? What did the students say about this, Mr. Giles? I think that's a really interesting comment. You look for nuance and insight. Did they offer any here?
Yeah, it's really interesting. They're talking about the timelessness of the color, and I think that's interesting, the silver color of the
Mr. Giles,
car.
my friend in high school had a yellow car. He thought that was great for about a month. And then that car was no longer timeless. That car was ugly, right? So silver's important, right? That's a really important choice.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, it's a nuance and a detail they decided to mention. Now we have this rather large paragraph talking about the textual features.
Permission to speak?
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned about that one. That's a long paragraph. It makes me wonder what that would look like handwritten. I think students, you want to avoid massive paragraphs. This one's kind of on the border of maybe should be broken in half.
Yeah, and if you looked at our previous video, the text has a lot of different components to talk about. You could have, one paragraph just focusing on that headline, and then another paragraph looking at the copy of the ad that looks like a poem. Maybe break that up.
Maybe, because it is a bit overwhelming, but it's good. It's a good paragraph. What are some things that you see happening in here, Mr. Giles?
Well, I like how they're clued into lots of different aspects of the text, like the font, but also the word choice, the ambiguous statements. They're trying to pick apart the text and analyze it, and they're doing a pretty good job.
They are. I think they've really got this dichotomy between now and the future, between making the move versus being stagnant. I think they've really picked up a lot of the nuance and a lot of the main ideas of the ad through this.
I would have liked them talk about antithesis or contrast. That's
Me
in
too.
that, but again, they've done a nice job of looking at aspects of language.
They've
It could have been unpacked a tiny bit more or labeled a bit more.
I agree. I think there's more to say. Perhaps they should have taken on the font, the structure on its own, and then maybe the language on its own as well. Maybe that would have led to a better paper. But we don't have 6 hours to write this thing.
That's right.
We're under the gun here.
I mean, this is one student's response, and in that short, 75 minutes is not a lot of time.
And I love that rich idea at the end. There's never been a better time to make this investment. I think that's super convincing, and I think this writer has very good command of the text. We do see a brief conclusion. What do you notice there, Giles?
Again, they're going back to the value. They're going back to the value of buying a car. They're also really thinking about India and the growing middle class. I think that is really a vital. I think it's a vital piece of information, and I'd be looking for that.
Me too.
And they do a good job.
And I think once again there are satisfactory answers that address the literal, but I think this one does more. I think it's looking at the literal and it's also considering implications of the text and it's looking at nuance and subtleties. I think this is going to go above the 5 mark, Mr. Johnson.
Definitely. It could have picked up on some of that subtext we talked about in our previous video, but they do mention the lure. They mentioned the lure. I think the lure is a good word. They're trying to lure the audience. And again, that's what ads do. They lure us.
All right, man, let's score this thing.
Okay. I think with understanding of the ad, the discussion of the ad, the details of the ad that the student is talking about, I think are very good, very strong. It's not quite nuanced enough for the top mark, but I would put this out of 4 on that particular criteria.
Yeah, I would as well. For me, there's a great amount of work on the top third of the ad, but the writer, probably due to time constraints, has sort of neglected to talk about that middle section with the 3-year warranty and the bottom section where the car is featured on its own on the beach. So for me, what I see is top shelf, but there's just a little bit missing. I'm going to go A4.
Yeah, that's right. In terms of analysis and evaluation, it also put this at a 4. I think it has a little bit to do with how well they analyzed the language itself. Maybe they could have been a bit more precise with the language. Have a look at that copy and think about what you would say with the parallelism and the antithesis and some of the richness of that language. There's a lot of figurative language there that they missed.
They missed, but they did well. They did very well.
Yeah,
4 out of 5 is very good, which I believe is the score is the descriptor, right?
Yeah,
it's very good.
Absolutely. How about structure and organization?
I think the response is an appropriate length at nearly 1,000 words. I think we see a really good structure with an intro. We see a brief conclusion. For me, in the conclusion, Mr. Giles, to hit that top, I really want to see a bit more robust conclusion there, and perhaps that'll also better inform criterion A as well. So
I love the focus on the question.
Yeah, I agree. A couple topic sentences. I am struggling to highlight the language of the guiding question. I'm going to pin this at C4.
Okay.
But I could be persuaded to go C5.
Now, I would agree with you on the C4. Maybe all that long paragraph was something that
It's a bit off-putting, wasn't it?
A little bit off-putting.
Yeah, off-putting equals -1. Now we're down to 4.
And
Okay.
language-wise, I think this is extremely well written. I think it's precise. I think it's got nice sentence variety, and it's got a high readability factor with
Exactly.
good vocabulary.
Now, and there's no wow vocabulary, but we're not writing a novel here trying to entertain. We're doing textual analysis, so I think the vocabulary is rich enough to warrant D5. So that has this paper coming in at a 17 out of 20, which is right on the 6-7 border, which I think is a really fair score for this paper.
I agree. So we hope that just going over student responses helps you see us talk about just different strengths and weaknesses of a particular response, and think about like what you would do for your response. So.
Yeah, so in closing, keep watching the channel. We'll be doing some more Paper 1 videos. We may get a little long here as we get into the exam session, but stay with us. Keep watching the videos in their entirety, and we think these will really help you improve your Paper 1s. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Thanks, guys.